If you are here for the art and design panel, you're in the right spot. We have 15 minutes, so we keep it really tight. Brian's on the corner there. I'm Tim. We'll have the panelists introduce themselves. This is the third in a panel, exploring how AR is impacting design-influenced fields. We started out with the field of agency marketing. We just completed an architectural panel, and now we're in art and design. And if you've been in the studio, you'll probably hear some themes come back. I want to go ahead and have the panelists introduce themselves just briefly. If you give us a headline or two about yourself, and then we'll jump right into a leading question.
Hi, I'm Scott Niadlik. I'm a creative technologist here at Beam Interactive. Dave Batista was just speaking earlier. He's my boss. I primarily during the day try and build AR stuff for work, but in free time build it for art because to me it's just a really expressive medium, so it's something that's really exciting to kind of be building in. So.
And I'm Cindy Bishop. I am I call myself a digital interactive artist. I'm founder of VR Doodler, which is about drawing in AR and VR.
Hey, I'm Kat Schneider. I work at Arrow Street as an architectural and virtual experience designer.
I'm Paul Henry Smith. I'm an entrepreneur. I started a couple of companies out of MIT and Harvard Innovation Lab that are focused on music performance and creation.
Kachina Studer from Arrow Street. I am the lead VR, AR designer and developer for the virtual studio.
Hi, my name is Judith Amores Fernandez. I'm a PhD student at the Fluid Interfaces Group here at the Media Lab, and I'm also one of the co-presidents of VR at MIT.
Wonderful. Welcome. In the last panel, there was this trailing question that's still in the air. And that is about how these new tools of AR and VR might be getting in the way or even tethering the creative process and design process and fettering it. Can you talk about, you've got HCI background and
yeah.
some of the others of you do as well. Can you talk about the challenges of integrating and relating to this new technology in the design process, in the creative process, ways that you've successfully gotten it out of the way or made it more in the flow, and ways that it still disrupts or it creates a dissonance in your design or creative process. So Judith, we'll start with you. And then panelists, please jump in.
So I think augmented and virtual reality, since it gives you a sense of immersion, I think it promotes also the state of flow that artists use to kind of being immersed. So I think when you're designing something in 3D, I think augmented reality is super useful. Also, if you want to just like kind of walk around, especially for example with the HoloLens, you can. One of the projects I'm going to show tomorrow, it's actually around that how you can even paint using augmented and virtual reality and kind of enhancing this creativity that we all have. So I think this is like a huge advantage of using the headset. Before we used to have like these smartphones and sometimes it's on the way. So I think just being immersed, it kind of gives you this flow of doing something.
Other thoughts?
Well, I think what people create with the headsets and the devices are really amazing, but I'm really interested in what we can do with WebVR. And it's open source. I'm really interested in allowing you as the audience, as content creators, to create in AR and VR. So right now you can go online and you can draw. Of course, it's drawing on a 2D surface, but it can render in 3D coordinates. And so I think if we can think about ways of bootstrapping other content creators and not just, the de facto creation in Unity, we could really start to go somewhere.
Yeah, Cindy and I were talking this morning about it, looking at our latest demo, and it is an interesting thing to try and bring context of the way that people are used to creating stuff now, but applying it to the way that AR is. Rather than taking where AR is currently and just trying to fit only within that, take the paint and the aesthetics and everything that we know already and we're used to, and bring it in there. Because the interfaces on these devices are very clunky right now. So it takes a lot of effort to try and fit around it, as you were describing. So it's easier to try and build, to take what you can and try and bootstrap it in, loading in models, drawing on models, and just getting it so that you can get the data quickly so that a user can come in and without even really thinking about it, just start creating stuff.
You said that the user interface is clunky. Can you tell us at this point what's your favorite VR, AR user interface? Who's doing the best at this, knowing that it still has to improve? Maybe go down the line and tell us like who you think is like, what hardware makers, we've talked a lot about Unity, but tell us what hardware makers are creating the best user experience.
I think personally it tends to be a little clunky, but so far the Leap motion controller tends to be the most exciting to me. When you actually integrate it in with VR, they're starting to integrate it with mobile VR as well now. But it gives you a very nice feedback one-to-one with your hands. The Oculus, the touch and all that is also really neat, but just the ability to put your hands out there and do this and see it one-to-one is a kind of an almost magical experience. So.
Well, I'm going to say the Vive because of Tilt Brush, right? I mean, Tilt Brush is a very exciting experience. But again, I know everyone wants to sell the devices and make things really cool. But again, I'm kind of thinking about how you can work with your phone and maybe a very simple kind of eyepiece or something that can sense space and enable us to use what we already have with us.
I would definitely echo support for the Vive. I have really enjoyed kind of experimenting with that hardware. I think I'm excited about the Oculus controls. I think they're much more comfortable than the Vive. And just to touch quickly on where the last panel left off, I think this influx of AR, VR, MR technology, particularly within the discourse of architecture, presents us with a very unique opportunity to take mastery and ownership over these tools so that we're not being driven by what the software can do and starting to really move into almost a developer role where we can create tools that do exactly what we want them to do.
Thank you. Paul, you and another panelist have some experience in creating the sonic elements of virtual spaces. And I'd like to hear from the panel, but Paul, to start out with, what about we look at the visual and we're so caught up in the visual. And yet there are other senses that need to be engaged to create immersive environments, right? So talk to me about your experience in creating the sound dimensions of the virtual environment or augmented environment, and how you might even be experimenting with sound as a component of transmitting information.
Thank you for including music in the panel. Music is a reality too, just like the visual world, and I think it's completely ignored in general in AR. The idea that there is a reality that's sonic and musical that could be augmented in some way is not really touched on, but it's something that hundreds of millions of people every day do. They play music, they sing music, they dance, and they do it often with devices and earbuds and that sort of thing, so there's a lot of technology surrounding it. But to your point about the sonic aspect of sort of visual augmented reality, I will just mention that there are far fewer tools available to people who work in sound. I'll just mention Fmod and Wise, which in the gaming community, audio and music producers use to kind of connect what we are familiar with in 3 dimensions in space with their corresponding sonic parameters. So for example, if you're creating a music cue for a game and you need to walk down a hall, you want the music to kind of reflect the space that you're entering. So there are tools that do that sort of thing automatically and tie in with the visual. Those are really nice. But in terms of augmenting the reality of music making and music performance, which is what I was involved in, there's very little so far.
Yeah, it just gets back to Juan's point about the human and the technology and how we turn off, but also what do we mean by immersive? And I think our attention goes to the bright and shiny things, but we miss all these subtle cues that are available in the spaces we design. We have a couple minutes for an audience question. If you have a question, just step up. There's no mic. There's mics right here. So raise your hand, and if you'd like to ask a quick question, please jump on a mic. And while you're waiting and thinking, I'll ask a question about design education. There's a lot of tension in how design education is evolving from the material to the immaterial. In VR and AR, we're entering these immaterial spaces, and all this talk about service design. What are the tensions in a couple of words that you see in how design education may need to evolve, and also how apprenticeship and practice of design and arts needs to evolve to embrace these new technologies. So first, on design education, thoughts?
I really think that it's about how you're going to get it out there in a massive way. I think ready adoption of a technology is really how you're going to get it to people, and if the equipment is cost prohibitive, it's going to be hard to get it out into schools. Brookline Interactive is doing a really cool job getting it out into their community. They have the resources, they have the equipment, but how are you going to get this into the hands of the kids that are at the schools down the street? And again, I think the web is definitely one way to go about it.
Please, the question.
Hi, my name is Yu Jie. I'm from Harvard Graduate School of Design. So I have a question that, for example, in the design process, sometimes you sketch, right? And it helps you develop your idea, and sometimes the process is more like an abstract process because you kind of like to open your mind and let your ideas flow. But I feel like for technology, like augmented reality or virtual reality, it's more like a precise thing. Like it offers a very good precision. For example, Arrow Street, you guys are doing you put design models in virtual reality to kind of give users a sense of precision of the buildings, about the scales, the distance, all kind of things. So I was wondering, do you think the technology of VR or AR, the precision aspect of it, is it empowering the design process, or is it not?
I think it can be empowering to the design process, but also I know that at Arrow Street we're trying to start creating some tools in these platforms and developing for ourselves, and kind of segueing from all these old programs that we've been using that have a lot of clutter and a lot of toolboxes and a lot of add-ons, and kind of creating more of a minimal experience where you are able to just get out sort of that visceral reaction to whatever you're doing and just be able to create.
That's all we have time for. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, audience. Thanks for your question. Brian, thank you.